We're gonna go ahead and jump right in at this point. And I'm Kristen Brogy, which I think all of you know at this point, and I work at the Plainfield Public Library. And this particular Northstar program that includes both folks from the Labor and Literacy Library program, as well as other folks who use Northstar within New Jersey. This program is part of the Labor and Literacy Library program, which is a partnership between Plainfield and the state library, and it allows us to offer you this and all kinds of other workshops that will help your libraries increase your digital literacy offerings. So before we get started, I'm just gonna find out where everybody is with Northstar. And what I'm gonna ask y'all to do is you're gonna use the reaction button. I'm so used to having everything in Zoom that I wasn't sure if that'll work. But as I ask the questions, if you put up a reaction, whether you raise your hand, add a frog, like whatever reaction you want to use is great. But I'm just curious what you all are doing with Northstar. Who's using Northstar right now in their library? And are there reactions to let you guys do it and just nobody's using Northstar yet? Okay, so Tali's saying no. Okay, so it looks like nobody's currently using Northstar. So the next couple of questions I already have my answers to, which is nobody's really using the online learning, the assessments, or the curriculum. Does anybody have specific goals for what you wanted to learn in this workshop? That one you might have to unmute and share.
I would definitely like to see if I can integrate it eventually into our virtual programming that we're trying to start. So okay. I just like to get the overview to see what we can do with it.
That sounds good. Anybody else? Nathan?
Yeah, I want to try to if I can use it for my workshops.
Okay.
Especially for my basic computer one. Because I use it like for myself, like I go through it, take the information that I need, and I use it for the workshop that I do. Great. But I don't use the actual Northstar. So okay. I want to like to start like actually using it in class.
Sounds like a good plan. And go ahead, Alex.
What I'd like to do is I'd like to right now I have a introduction to computer class that I created myself, but I feel that I have a lot of students that they go through the class and it's just a basic navigating and mouse class, and some of them could hop right into the other classes without a problem, but a lot of them clearly need more help. Mm-hmm. So what I'd like to try to do is maybe over time phase out my introduction class and replace it with Northstar, and then if those students that are very beginners could need additional help before they move on, that I can have them do that help through Northstar.
Great. All of those are like, I love all of the ideas. And all three of you should, sort of take note of who you are, because you're all doing very similar kinds of things in terms of running classes in your libraries for digital literacy. So definitely, you guys are all good to meet up with each other. I think that would be great. Northstar, what we're focusing on today is we're going to focus on looking at how learners can utilize Northstar and the Northstar online learning. So for some of you, you might use it as homework for your learners that are going through a couple classes or extra practice. And as Alex said, also, you might decide to use it as skipping that beginning class so you can teach more of the higher level classes and allow learners to come into it using Northstar as the way to get started. So there's a lot of different uses for Northstar. And then it sounds like a couple of you are still going to come back and take the curriculum class so that you learn how to find the curriculum and use the curriculum that's in Northstar as well, which is great. So big picture of why we are here running this second workshop in our Northstar series. Today, we're going to look at and learn the two different ways you can create learner accounts in Northstar. We'll learn how to be sure that those learner accounts link back into your library information. And then we're going to learn how a learner logs into Northstar to either take an assessment or an online lesson. So our very specific goals today, by the end of today's session, you will each be able to find your library's Northstar URL, and you're going to be able to decide where and how and when you're going to use it. You'll also be able to create learner accounts in Northstar, as well as learn how to tag learners and decide if you're going to do that. And then we'll look at how to log into Northstar so that you know how a learner will switch between assessments and the Northstar online learning. So we have those 3 specific goals, and I am open to any other questions that you have, thoughts, ideas, any of that. During the last session, we all did an overview, and you all were in that last session, so I know I can say that. We all did an overview of the different parts of Northstar to really help you decide what you want to do with Northstar in your library, or what you're able to do with Northstar in your library. So at this point, we're going to focus specifically on allowing our learners to use the NSOL. Remember, that stands for Northstar Online Learning, but they call it NSOL, and that abbreviation shows up in a bunch of places. So the Northstar self-paced online learning modules, you might need to work with a patron just to get them started into Northstar. But once they have a learner account and they see how to navigate through the assessments or navigate through the online learning lessons, learners really should be able to sit down at a library computer and start using Northstar on their own. That is assuming that they know how to get into Northstar. So the best way to do that is to make sure that you've given your library computers that they have easy access to Northstar so that your learners can get into your library's Northstar. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I, as a learner, log into Northstar. So I have created a learner account for myself as well as my staff account. We're going to take a look at how I'm going to get into Northstar as a learner. So I'm sitting down right now at my public computer at the library, and I was told that there is a bookmark for Northstar on that computer. So I go ahead and click on Northstar, and that automatically brings me into Plainfield's Northstar homepage. And I can then go through the steps of creating a user or logging in, etc. Before we do that, one of the ways to get into Northstar is to bookmark it on public computers. Where else might you decide that in your library you would want to bookmark the Northstar URL? Any thoughts?
Would it possibly be a good idea, I guess, to do it in a location where you know you're going to use that computer for classes?
Yep. So any of the computers that you're going to use for classes, you want to make sure that somehow users can get into Northstar. Other thoughts? Some libraries put it on their library website so that learners can access it from home, but using Northstar for your particular library, because that will then track all the learner information in your dashboard. Other ideas? The other thing that we actually do in Plainfield is, this is just my computer. It's not really a public computer. We don't bookmark it per se. We create a shortcut on the desktop of the computers so that it's even easier for our learners to get into, where they just have to double click on a icon on the desktop. It opens the web browser and then it opens them right into Northstar as well. So there's a lot of different ideas, places. You may choose to do all of them. You may not choose to have, and it depends on how you plan on using Northstar, where you're going to go ahead and put it. But
I have a quick question. Most of our resources that we have, that the patrons have accessible from home or remotely, they have to log in through their library card and PIN number. When is that how typically the other libraries that have remote access have it set up, or?
Typically they have it set up so that users can request a Northstar user or learner ID,
Okay,
or they have it set up so that learners can self-enroll them. So you do not need a library card to be able to utilize Northstar.
gotcha.
You may decide that, therefore, I am not putting it on my library website. I want to maybe talk about it on my library website. I need my learners to come into the library so that I make sure they have a library card. They make sure that it's all going to work out that way. That's a great question, Alex.
Okay.
Other
Thank you.
questions, thoughts before we move on?
You always need your location PIN to be able to record the user's stuff, right?
That's a great question, Nathan, and that's going to move us into the next thing. I moved slides a little quick. So I use the URL to get myself, you can't see me pointing at my second screen. I'm so sorry, but on this screen, I used the library's URL. So what I was going to then go into, and I did not pay Nathan to ask this question, how do I make sure that when users click whatever it is they click, whether it's a bookmark, a link, use the icon on my desktop, how do I know it's going to link back to my library? And you can link it either with the location PIN or your location specific URL. Nathan, I personally never use that location PIN because nobody's going to remember it. I'm going to lose it. My learners are going to lose it as well. So I always use the URL that takes you to the Plainfield Public Library Northstar page. The question is, where do you find that URL that's going to get you to the Woodbridge Library page or the Atlantic City Library page or the Burlington County Library page? We talked about this in the last session, but does anybody remember where you can find that location specific URL for your library? I'm going to show you. So now I am not the learner. I am actually Kristen at Plainfield. So instead of my fake learning account, I'm now staff. So when I log into Northstar, whoop, I click login. When I log into Northstar with my staff information, apparently nothing in the world, no, that is my library account. Nothing's going to work right for me today. Oh, perfect. So when I log into Northstar, and I had it open before, I may have forgotten to log out before. When I log in, the first thing I see in my admin portal is my location information. Here is my URL. This is the particular URL that if you share with your learners or your patrons, if you put on a website, if you bookmark, if you email it to folks in your class if you want them to try it at home, by using your location specific URL, that's what will always bring you into Northstar as part of your library information. So Nathan, for me, I just find it easier to share that link versus to say, okay, go to Northstar. And then every time you go in, remember to type 7NTA. So it's just easier to do it that way. Does that make sense? Do you understand why I'm using the URL versus a code? Awesome. I love it. I see a thumbs up. Okay. Does everybody remember where I just said to go find it?
Has anybody ever set up a tiny URL for that?
Oh, yeah. A lot of libraries will do a tiny URL that can link up to that. Absolutely. That would make it, I never thought to put that in the training, but that would just make it so much easier. Yep. You absolutely should do that. Like Plainfield, Northstar, Northstar, Plainfield. Yeah, That'll make it so much easier. I love that idea. Can I steal it?
Sure.
Alrighty. Any other questions around that URL that allows learners to get to Northstar through our library so that we can track their usage, that we can report on them? Okay. When I go to that URL, it brings me as a learner to the library's Northstar page. So I just want to go over a quick review of what you've got in here. My library information is going to show up at the top of the screen. So here I know I've gone to the Plainfield page because I can see all of that information. I can also see who was set up as the first administrator. All of this information, while it was set up by Northstar, once the administrator knows how to get into Northstar, they can change any of this they need. So that maybe Scott doesn't want emails, questions about Northstar. He wants them to go to me. So he'll put my information in here, change the phone number, whatever you need to change in there. So the very first thing you see is the information about your library using Northstar. Below that is a section where learners can start taking proctored assessments. You see how it says join proctor mode, validate computer PIN. We're not going to talk about proctored assessments today, other than for me to remind you that during the last lesson, we talked about proctored and unproctored assessments. Proctored, passing a proctored assessment allows your learners to get a badge, letting people know that they have passed the assessment. Proctored assessments also provide you with your learner with a certificate that they passed the assessment. Unproctored assessments, if they're passed, learners still get a badge, but they don't have that like physical paper that allows them to say they have a certificate for blah, blah, blah. So below there, we've got our proctor stuff. We're going to talk about proctoring at the next session. Below the proctor section is a section where you can change the language. And right now, the language can be changed from English to Spanish and back and forth. I did confirm that Northstar is working on other languages, and they just don't have right now the funding and the personnel to actually make that happen, but they are working towards translating to other languages and apparently are taking volunteers from other libraries who want to get involved in that project, but you can reach out to Northstar for that. So if you change the language on this front screen, it changes the testing session from English to Spanish for that one login. Then below that is folks who have a learning account or a learner account, they can log in on this screen. Before we talk about logging in with a learner account to take a test, I wanted to point out there is a section where you can allow folks. We're going to end in 10 minutes. When the 10 minutes, I'm going to keep talking till then, and then we'll all just pop back into this same, thanks Nathan, the same link. Okay, so if somebody doesn't want to create a learner account, they can still, they can still take a test or an assessment. It will link back into your dashboard with the person. So if Sarah doesn't want a learner account, she'll go, Sarah Antonelli, continue. She can then take an assessment in Northstar. The only thing it will allow her to do is see her assessment results. Having a learner account allows her to take proctored assessments. It allows her to track all her history of assessments. It also allows her to use the online learning. Learners must have the learning account to use Northstar online learning. So, covered all of that, great. So before I log us in, anybody who maybe is looking at their library's Northstar page right now, you might have noticed that you don't have this line that says need a learner account. Sign up as a learner. This is a feature that you can turn on in Northstar, but it's turned off by default. Northstar automatically assumes that the library staff will create all of the learner accounts. It's something that you can turn on, but it actually, to me, makes sense that it's off by default, because while using Northstar is easy, it does require a little bit of instruction. So if we let a learner set up their own account, we actually don't get a chance to say, okay, here's what you do with your assessment. Here's how you get into the online learning. And here is the stuff you should practice on. So by taking the 10 minutes to really show a learner how to navigate through Northstar, make sure that they're way more likely to actually use all of the tools that are in Northstar. If you do want to turn on this learner account where they can self-enroll them, it is an admin feature. So your admin could very easily turn it on. Instead of me walking you through the steps right now, I'm going to teach you how to get information yourself. If I want to do something in Northstar to change how my Northstar is set up, where do you think I'm going to go? So I'm trying to find the right Northstar link now. I am going to be Kristen. Oh, sorry. Zoom was trying to get me to change my plan. So Kristen just logged into Northstar as a staff. Where am I going to go in here to then try to figure out how do I do something? Does anybody remember where we could go or want to guess?
So you mean like to actually like access the assessment?
To figure out how to change something, how it's set up in Northstar.
Oh.
So I want to change the name, or I want to change so I can let learners self-enroll. And this one I'm going to give y'all because it's so important, resources. Anytime you don't know how to do something in Northstar, you log in, you're going to go to the admin portal, which is where we are right now. And then you're going to go to resources, and there are tons of resources that are available for you. I always go into the manual. The Northstar manual is monstrous. It's humongous, but I want to do something with my learners. So on my keyboard, I press Control F, and I'm going to search for learner. And it starts to highlight all of the learner things. And I zoomed right past it. Allowing learners to make their own accounts. There's a lot to Northstar. This manual, though, is so helpful for figuring out how to do things. So if you decide that you wanted to turn on the learner can create their own accounts, you're going to log in, you're going to go to the admin portal. The resources is just so helpful. So I'm going to keep pointing that out to you all, because you won't have me here to tell you all the answers all the time. So you can always go into that. And if you call me and ask me questions, I'm probably going into the resources and then looking at their manual as well. So I just wanted to show you how to do that. Okay, let's step back then for a second. If we turn on the letting learners create their own account, it will allow them to self-register. They're still going to fill in all of the same information that I'm going to show you in a minute, and then they'll get an email, they'll accept it, and then they'll create their password. I'm going to show you all as staff how to create a learner account. So to create a learner account, you need 4 things. And I'm not going to make you guess because we're going to get kicked out in a moment. So I'm going to keep moving forward through this. I'm sorry. All right. The 4 things you need to create a learner account. You need somebody who is staff. So I can create a learner account because I'm a staff person in my library with a staff login to Northstar. Who remembers how to get a staff account? Maybe Nathan doesn't have a staff account right now for his library. Who can create that for him? Anybody remember? Okay, it's your Northstar admin. So your Northstar admins, and I'm going to again bring us back into the admin portal. In the admin portal, my location information lists my Northstar admins for me. So if I need somebody to get me into Northstar and create me as staff, through the location information, you're going to reach out to whoever is the admin in your library. And if that admin doesn't remember how to create your staff account, say to them, hey, just go to resources and let's look it up. And they're super easy. It's almost identical to what I'm about to show you. So
quick question. I don't want to hold you up.
No, we're going to jump back in and keep finishing. It's all good.
Is there a when you're in Northstar, is there a difference between what the admin could access and the staff member could access?
Yes. And the only difference is that staff can access all your learners, your assessments, your reports, your resources. The admin in the location information can add staff. They can change any of your location information. They can add staff. They can change location information. There's a third thing, and I don't remember what the third thing is, but it is, it's that they can turn on that you can allow learners to self-enroll. So it's very, very minimal what staff versus admin can do. Good question though. Any other questions before we go on to creating learner accounts? All right, so when we create learner accounts, we need somebody who has a staff account. We actually need a learner, somebody who wants to use Northstar. We need a web browser. According to Northstar, you need a modern web browser. So their FAQs say you can run Northstar on a modern browser such as Chrome, Firefox, Safari, or Edge. Just calling that out. And your learner needs an email address. So the staff member is going to create the account for the learner. You need access to a web browser, and your learner needs an email address. We frequently have learners who come in without email addresses, and we teach them how to create one. Typically, we help them create a Gmail account, although one of our guides, we have less than a minute. Again, we'll just log back in. One of our guides recommends using proton.me because it doesn't take much information. It doesn't keep track of a lot of your personal information the way that Google does. The reason we go to Gmail more often than not is it's enough people use it that it's easier for a new user to get help with a Gmail account. All right, we need staff, we need a learner, we need a browser, we need an email address. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at how to create a learner as if we were a staff member. So I'm going to show you how to do that. First thing we need to do is we invite the learner. We do this in the admin portal. So to get to learners in your admin portal, you're a staff member, you log in, you go to the learner option at the top of the admin portal, and from there you're going to see something that says invite learners. The second step is to actually create the learner. So I'm going to show it to you real quick, and then we'll walk through the rest of the steps. Okay, so I am in my admin portal. I click on learners. When I click on learners, hang on one second. When I click on learners, I choose invite new learner. The reason why I've got the screen really short is it has all of our users in it. So I just want to sort of protect folks' privacy. So I went into my admin portal. I clicked on learners. In all of my learners, I click invite new learner. And then I see all of the information for setting up my learner. So I'm going to go back into the PowerPoint, and you're going to see it's that same exact screen. So once you want to invite the learner, you go ahead and you fill in their name, first and last. You fill in the email address, and then you can set their language preference here. So if you remember when we looked at clicking the URL, you could change the language preference on that screen. That changed it just for the one time that person was using it. If I change the language preference when I create the learner, it keeps that learner set with that particular language preference. Your learners can also change it on their own when they take a look at their profile, and I'll show you that in a few minutes. Once you have set the language preference, you can also tag your learners. Tags have to do with organizing your learners into groups, and I will go over that with y'all in just a few minutes. And then once you set it all up, you click Invite Learner. When you click Invite Learner, they get an email to whatever email address you've put in there that asks them to accept the invitation and create their password for it. So the staff part is complete. For our learners need to open up that email, which sometimes is a little bit challenging. More so for, you already know if you taught somebody how to create their email address, you already know you're going to have to show them how to get into their email and open up the email. If you have somebody who's coming into the library, they want a learner account and they told you what their email was, you filled it all in, they may not on the library computer know how to log into their email. They may not have all of the information. You know how a lot of email accounts, Gmail especially, is going to ask you, okay, this is your username, this is your password, but now we have to verify you, and we verify you through another email, etc. What we'll frequently do with setting up learners and having them use their personal email is I'll say to them, hey, do you know how to get into your email on your phone? Is that how you typically do it? If they use their email on their phone, I just have them log in that way, open up the email. Once they open the email, they just click on this blue button. The blue button allows them to accept the invitation, and then it just prompts them to create their password. So at that point, your learner now has their username, which is their email address, and they have their password, and they just can log in to Northstar with that. Before we talk about tags, questions on creating learner accounts, especially because we got cut off in the middle there. Does this make sense? Anybody who's going to use Northstar as staff, you go into your admin portal. Perfect, great, Tali, thank you. And then from your admin portal, you're going to create the learner. So again, I keep calling them learners because that's what Northstar calls them. You'll see the learner block at the top, and you'll invite the learner. Alrighty, I'm going to go through tags real quick, just so that you understand what they are. Tags are a way of organizing your learners. You might want to organize them based on the name of the class they're attending, or you might want to organize them based on when they started using Northstar. Like these are all the folks who went in and used it for the spring session. Or maybe I'm going to invite you all to use Northstar, and I'm going to call it my Labor and Literacy Library Northstar class. And I would tag you all that way. And you can have multiple tags for folks if you want to. At Plainfield, so here's an example of how Plainfield tags the learners. I've cut off the learner names, but you're going to see the list of tags that are here on your screen. We tag people by class so that our different instructors can filter by class to see, oh, have my learners been doing their lessons in Northstar, or what are the assessment results looking like? Can I see if there's a commonality of things that I need to focus on more when I use Northstar? So if you choose to tag your learners, again, it's a great way to organize your learners. You saw that you could add the tags when we were creating the learner account, but you can also tag or untag folks in the admin portal. Excuse me, you can also tag or untag folks in the admin portal at any time. So if you need to create tags in Northstar, you're still in your learners, you click on Manage Tags. Here are all of the tags that are in Northstar in the Plainfield account already. If I was going to create a tag, and I'm just going to, again, show it to you on the screen. Learners, I go to Manage Tags. If I was creating the Labor and Literacy Library Northstar tag, I would type in the name, I would click create tag. It would show up in my list. It would confuse everybody else in the library who works on Northstar. So I'm not going to click create tag, but you can then see all of the different tags from the classes that we have in Northstar. I can edit the tags over here as well. I can also archive the tags if I need to. So once I create the tags, I can then assign them to users as however I feel is necessary. When they create their, when I create their Northstar Learner account, I can tag them, or I can tag them separately as learners in admin portal. Or if I had created this Labor and Literacy Library Northstar tag, it would have a URL for tagged sign up. I could then give that URL to you, Alex and Sarah and Nathan and Telly. And if I gave that, you could create your own account and it would automatically tag you as Labor and Literacy Library Northstar. Okay, so tags are just a great way of grouping. I guarantee that once you actually start using learners in Northstar, you're going to forget a lot of how we did all of this. Tags. Tags are how you're going to group learners. Remember your resources. We love those resources. That's going to walk you through and show you a bit more about how to do it. To assign a tag to a learner, you find the learner in the admin portal. Pardon me. And then you're just going to assign the tag directly to them. So it allows you to put those tags in there. Thoughts on using tags when you first, go ahead, Alex.
I just have two quick questions.
Yep.
Can you retag a learner after you've tagged them into one category?
Yes.
And my second question was, can you tag the same learner with multiple tags?
Yep, I'm going to find me. I am tagged right now. Excuse me. I am tagged right now as, sorry, hang on, I'm going to find me again. So I'm tagged right now as staff. But if I click on myself and it'll show you all of my information, I can assign tags and I can assign as many tags as I need to. And now if I go back, did I assign them? Forgot to click on apply. So I selected all my tags, I applied them. And in a moment, you're going to see that Kristen has multiple tags. And if we go back this screen, one more, here we go. So I see that this particular learner has 2 tags. I can also remove Kristen's tags by going back in here and getting rid of the tags that I don't want for her anymore. Was that what you were looking for?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I think you explained it.
Great. And again, I don't, if you're not going to go into Northstar right away and start using this, just remember that we're talking about our tags and that you can find that information in the resources. You also know how to email us, so that's okay as well. All right, so we looked at organizing our learners with tags. I showed you how to create the tag and apply them. Beautiful. At this point, we now know how to create learners. We can let them self-create, but we need our admin to turn that feature on, or we go into the admin portal, go to learners, invite learner, put a couple pieces of information in there. They have to then, in their email, get the email, create their password, and they're all set. So now we want to be sure that we know how our learners can use Northstar. Before we start talking about how can our learners use Northstar to take assessments or to do the online learning, does anybody have anything about tags or the admin portal that you're still curious about? All right, I'm going to take that for now as a no. Perfect. Okay, couple ways to get your learners into Northstar. We looked earlier at that location-specific URL. So whenever you let them get them into Northstar from that location specific URL, it brings you to your Northstar testing page for your library. So I'm gonna log me in. So I'm still, here's me as the learner person. I clicked on that Plainfield's Northstar URL. I make sure I click on the login now. My learner information comes up and I log in. Oh, I always forget to point this part out. When somebody logs into Northstar, it also tracks, are they using it in my library or somewhere else? Kristen is not at the library right now, so I'm going to choose no, I'm somewhere else, and I'll click save. And you can actually report on usage inside and outside of the library. So I am logged into Northstar as a Northstar learner, and I am on the assessment screen for Northstar. Northstar assumes that everybody is going to start by taking assessments so that they then know what to work on. Anybody have a guess on how I can tell I'm on the assessment screen? If you look at my screen, what makes you know that I'm on the assessments versus the online learning? And the reason I'm pointing this out to you is because it's going to confuse your learners. Because I see proctor mode over here, that's what lets me know that all of these are ways for me to take assessments in Northstar. Okay, so if you see proctor mode for your learner, they're going to take an assessment versus use the online learning. Oh, I had it all kinds of cute on my PowerPoint and I forgot. So if you see it on the proctor mode, you know they're ready to take an assessment. In order for your learner to go to the online learning, they click on their username up at the top right corner and they choose Northstar Online Learning. So if I go back into Northstar and I click on Kristen, and then I click on Northstar Online Learning, now I see that it says Northstar Online Learning at the top of my screen. And now I'm looking at my learner dashboard. So again, we've got the proctor mode allows me to take tests, or if I click on my name and click on Northstar Online Learning, it's going to bring me into the online learning dashboard. I'm making this really clear because this is the one part that confuses our learners, is they log in and they want to get into their lessons. To get into their lessons, they need to click on their name, click on Northstar Online Learning, and that's going to move them into their lessons on their dashboard. Okay, so that's just an important focus to help you all with your learners. Once you teach them that, they get used to it. If the learner wants to change their language from English to Spanish or vice versa, when they log in, up at the top of the screen, they see their dashboard, assessment, profile, or help. If they click on their profile, they can change their language for themselves and from Spanish to English and vice versa. That keeps it changed for them every time they log in, just like if you had set it as a learner. So let's go ahead and assume that I am your learner, or Kristen is my learner, and I'm going to teach her a little bit about using Northstar. So now that y'all know how to create your learners, let's just make sure that you know how to work with your learners to use Northstar. So the steps with your learners are simply that once you've got them logged in, usually they will take an assessment as a pre-test. So they take an unproctored assessment as a pre-test. They then use the online learning to learn the tools. Then I usually have them take another unproctored assessment to test out their knowledge. And then eventually they'll take it proctored so they can get their certificate. So I'm going to log in again, or I am logged in as Kristen. I can see that Kristen in Northstar, she took the basic computer skills. She got an 82.5. Wow, except passing in Northstar is an 85. So Kristen needs a little work in order to be able to take the proctored assessment and pass it. So she needs to work on the Northstar Online Learning. But let's say Kristen hasn't done anything. So she's logged in, she's going to click Take Assessment. She wants to take the basic computer skills assessment. I'm going to, I don't know if you hear the music. I didn't turn on volume sound for you all, but it checks to see if we can hear what's going on. Then there is an orientation for your learner, and then it gives you the questions. So if I click on start, I can then try to click the answers. And so I've taken some tests, some assessments. I'm actually just gonna get out of the assessment for now, and it'll bring me back to my Northstar screen. Your learners will start or should start with assessments. Then they go to the Northstar Online Learning. From the Northstar Online Learning, then Kristen needs to know, well, how did she do? So I'm going to click on lessons. And when you click on lessons, oh, let me go back for a second. When you click on lessons, you can see that Kristen can just start the practice. She can look at all of the different parts of the lesson and decide that she wants to start with what's on a computer. Or Kristen took an assessment. She could go into the standards. The standards. So again, we clicked into the lessons. I click on standards. It's going to show me these standards, these skills that Kristen did not pass or get correct. Then it's going to show me all of the things that Kristen did get correct. So I can decide that Kristen's just going to start practicing with this particular standard. All right, does that make sense? If you go into the lessons, you can start the lesson from the beginning. You can click in the standards for the lesson and just work on those things that the learner messed up. You can also look at the assessment history and see how many times they've taken it and whether they're increasing their knowledge or not. Questions on working with Northstar to get into a lesson or to take an assessment? So on the screen right now, because I know that we've spent a lot of time and it's been an interesting class with us getting kicked out and all, on the screen shows you not only how the learner can look at their assessment results, but you can also, as staff, you can look at learner assessment results. One of the things that the assessment results for a staff person that they can find is that staff can see the specific question that a learner got incorrect. Learners only see which standard they need to work on. Northstar does not provide, this is the next question always, Northstar does not provide the correct answers to their assessments to anybody, staff, learner, nobody. And their rationale is that you need to work hard to pass and get a certificate. So you need to prove that you've learned the skills, not that you memorize the correct answers to the questions. That's also why the passing score for their assessments is an 85 to pass an assessment. And I meant to show you. So this is what it would look like if for Kristen's test. These are the questions she got incorrect, and I can click on each question to see the question that's wrong. But again, it still is not going to show me the correct answer. Before we talk about next steps, do you all feel comfortable figuring out how to create a learner account? Who remembers where to go to create a learner account?
You said it could be done by from the admin portal?
You got it. You need to be in the admin portal, learners, and then you're going to invite new learners. You create the account, your learner gets an email, they then create their password. When your learner logs in to Northstar, once they've logged in, are they here to take a test right now, or are they going to look at the online learning?
They're in, based on where it says proctor mode up top, they're
You got it.
in test mode.
They're in test mode. This is the most confusing part for learners. If you don't want to take an assessment, click your name, go to the online learning, and then it's going to show you as the learner what to do. If I wanted to see in my admin portal how Kristen was doing, I would view my learners, I would find Kristen, and then I could take a look at all of this one I can open up now. I can take a look at what she's done. I can click on Kristen's test. I can see where she has done great, what she needs to work on. She's gotten a lot wrong because she just keeps clicking things on the screen, and she needs to work on them and learn these. She will be able to learn them by going into the online learning, practicing. Questions at all on what we've done in Northstar today?
I have a question. Just percent, a rough percentage. How many learners sign themselves up for Northstar over at Plainfield?
We set that up for a very specific group of people, but we have almost nobody who does self-enroll. We created it for a different project we were working on where we needed a specific set of people to be able to go in and use Northstar on their own. So that's the only reason it's even turned on.
Okay. I was just curious if there was a large percentage or a small percentage.
Yeah, there's
just trying to decide if that's something we want to do here, at least initially, maybe later on.
Yeah, that's one of those sort of decisions. If it were me and I had a little bit of time, I would create a couple of workshops of how do you use Northstar? And I would let everybody self-enroll while they're sitting there. And then I would ask them all to come in. I would let them self-enroll. I would show everybody how to go into the assessment screen. I would have them each take an assessment. I would show them how to go into the online learning. I would start them in the online learning. Like I would walk a group of people through it together. We have another library who has a volunteer who works with Northstar. So that person is there specific days. If you want to get started in Northstar, come on this day at this time. So-and-so will help you out with it. So it's easier to have somebody start you in it so that you understand the different parts. But you can also, we only have it turned on for that one reason. Good question. Other questions? All right. If you are watching the video, your next steps for this are just to complete all of the information on the left side of the screen. Those of us who are here in our live Zoom, and actually everybody else as well, next steps would be start practicing with Northstar. If you're going to really start using the assessments, definitely take the administering Northstar assessments. It's actually very easy to become a Northstar proctor. Proctoring allows your learners to get certificates when they've passed the test, which then gives them that piece of paper of, hey, I know computer basics. I know using email. I know Microsoft Word. So it's very useful for your learners to have that piece of paper. Consider attending the Using Northstar curriculum. I know that both Nathan and Telly are thinking that that's the way that they're probably going to go. If you are not going to run classes in your library, the Northstar curriculum may not be something you're going to use right now. But if you possibly may ever, come and take a look because it'll show you a little bit more about how Northstar can be used in your library. Those of you who are Northstar libraries but haven't become part of the Labor and Literacy Library program, consider becoming a Labor and Literacy Library. We give you access not only to these Northstar workshops, but there are workshops on instructional skills and developing lesson plans and workshops in a box that you can then present in your library as well. So lots of next steps, but definitely practice using Northstar. Practice taking the assessments so that you understand how they work for your learners. And then if you have any other questions, please feel free to stick around. Our email address is on the screen here as well. And I want to thank you for your patience